Hey everybody, it's Big Daddy. So once again, we're here at Big Daddy and Friends, and you know what? This next guest, I have to say, everyone wants to know where I started my business. I guess building or networking or career idea. Well, our next guest happens to be one of the guys who I would say from day one, when I decided to get into this world of sports without having to put on any equipment any longer, he kind of saw the whole thing from the day one. So, and it's my honor and pleasure to welcome my longtime friend, Steeler great and legend, Merril Hoge. What's up, Hoge?
Big Daddy. It's good to see you, my brother. Good to see you.
I mean, just seeing you right now, like, even before we started, the memories that were flashing through my head, I mean, they were like, wow, it seems like it was just yesterday, you know?
Yeah, it does, man. I think the first time I met you, I went over to OD's apartment, and you guys were living together in that apartment right over off McKnight Road. I can't remember the exact name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, brother.
Right above the North Park Lounge.
Yep, right over there. Now, if you went over there, I'm sure it's been a while since you've been back there. It is completely changed. I mean, how it's developed over there is incredible.
Yeah, I was. I happened to be back there a couple of years ago for the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, and Bill Guerin invited me out to his house for his Stanley Cup party. And, I remember we would only go as far as like North Allegheny High School, and then there was like nothing there.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I go back there and I'm like, wow, like, North Hills was not the last stop. It was kept going and going and going. And, the Penguins facility is out there and, just night and day how that city's grown and expanded, within the years. So, but anyway, so listen, let's do a little history session here, just for all the fans. Merril Hoge played 8 years in the NFL. He played with the Steelers and he played with the Bears, and we're going to get into some good stories. But I'll tell you, it was funny. I'm watching you play the year before I got to Pittsburgh, and you guys were playing down in Houston. And here I am watching you, and you guys go down there and you beat them, and then all of a sudden you're in the AFC Championship game, and then I'm watching you against Denver, and unfortunately you guys fell short. I thought really that was the year that you guys were really going to go to the next game, the Super Bowl and whatnot. And then the following year, here I am hanging out with you. So it was kind of like, wow.
I understand that, how surreal that can be. When I was a kid, my favorite team was the Pittsburgh Steelers. I loved them. I watched every game. Back then, you had 3 channels. It isn't like today where you have all this, these resources. So, Monday night and Super Bowls were, the prime time games and the main games, and the Steelers were always in those and always winning them. But I loved the team. I loved everybody about them. So, I get drafted by them. I mean, Chuck Noll's still the head coach. They give me I'm in Franco Harris's locker. So I was in that was my locker. I was sitting right next to Donnie Shell. First time my first roommate was Mike Webster. Joe Green was still around. He was our defensive line coach. John Stallworth was still playing. I stepped in the huddle for the first time. I looked at Mike Webster and John Stallworth, and I'm like, so you talk about surreal. I get that. You go from watching them on television for decades, and then you're in the huddle with them. It was something the first couple weeks.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's kind of funny being around those years. You kind of, me being a big guy, it's like all of a sudden everyone thinks you're on the team. You're like filling in. And, I remember in the old Three River Stadium, just being able to walk in, through the side door there. And, you just wave to the guy and they're like, hey, what's up, Big Daddy? And you just keep walking all the way through. And I would, while you guys were doing whatever, I'd sit in the back in the equipment room with our friend Tony Parisi there, and listen to him complain and grumble about everything that was going on. So, you walk in that locker room and you're like, wow, there's Tunch Ilkin, and there's Greg Lloyd and this one and so on and so on. It's just like, wow, you don't get. I never got starstruck, but you had to say, wow, you're in a room with a lot of greatness, and I always look at every professional athlete. If you get to that point, you deserve all the credit in the world, and people should understand that you've come a long way to get there, and it's not easy, and it's a lot of work, and you know better than anybody how hard it is.
Well, you're right, Daddy, Big Daddy. They, you look at the numbers, roughly, when I speak to NFL groups and NFL players, I try to always create a perspective that they may have lost, and it's easy to lose it when you start playing at that level. But roughly 5 million kids start out playing, football with in some version, flag, tackle. But then only about 180,000, I think it's 180,000. I can't remember the exact number, but roughly 100 and some thousand kids get scholarships throughout the entire country. And then there's only about 1,900 NFL players. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you think of those numbers and the select few that get to play in the National Football League, you just try to draw a perspective in their attention to what an opportunity it is, and a rare opportunity it is to play at that level. And, and it doesn't last forever. I mean, Chuck Noll was great at talking about your life's work. I remember hearing, about your life's work. It's not football. And I remember my rookie year, and I was like, what do you mean it's not my life's work? I'm like, I'm going to be here forever. There's obviously somebody a little wiser than me, but it was so true, as long as, Tom Brady's run is most incredible in football history. And he's still going to retire in his 40s. Yeah. He's 40s. So, that there's, got to have other things in your life, but capitalize on that opportunity is what he was stressing to us. And couldn't be more true, and people that do that and players that do that have an easier transition than some do.
What's so funny is Chuck Noll. I remember one time I was in the weight room and with Neil, and Chuck Noll out of nowhere walks in and just looks at Neil and goes, hey, I knew a quarterback that worked his way out of the league. Yep. And he turned around and walked out. And I think Neil dropped the weights and was like, Daddy, let's go.
Yeah. Well, Chuck was, OD, Neil O'Donnell was, I mean, he was strong. I mean, he upper body wise. I don't think he ever squatted in his life. I never saw him squat. I used to bust.
He did it, but
did he attempt 135?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Okay,
he had good range of motion, but that was about it.
Meanwhile, he could bench like 405. I remember we were in speaking of Chuck. Chuck, I wasn't the only time Chuck did it. He walked by one time and Neil had just done 405. I think he'd just done a 405 kind of spotting. And Chuck walked by and saw that, and he goes, "You better get out of here." He goes, "You keep staying in this room. You're going to work your way right out of this room." He goes, "You're going to lift your way right." Like I said, "You're going to lift your way right out of the league." And then he walked right by. He goes, "There's no reason somebody should be doing 405 as a quarterback." But he was strong. I mean, like I couldn't do 405. I was telling Bo, I go, "Listen, how do you like this?" I go, "The guy protecting you can't even bench 405." My point was, that's how irrelevant it is. I mean, benching is irrelevant. It always cracks me up when I see the combine test. I mean, there is zero relevance to that, to playing especially the position, the parallel position. You're laying down. Dad, you played in the trenches. I mean, did you want to be laying on your back doing this? I mean, what technique is that? There's no technique in that. And these hands.
You're pushing someone off you because they put you on your ass.
Right. I'm like, that doesn't even give you any sense of football skill. It gives you zero. It tells you how much you can bench. That doesn't tell you anything about football. Cracks me up. I mean, if they wanted to do a real good test, should do 225 and then do a squat. I mean, see how many times you can do a squat. That's a greater example of the power that you want to see on a football feet, hips, hands. That's what I want to see. I want to see somebody lay on their back, bench pressing, irrelevant to football.
Yeah, that's you're definitely hitting it there, because the squat, that's a whole overall body exercise.
Best exercise is doing it right. I mean, some people do it incorrect and they try to do too much weight, but done right and done properly, it is the greatest exercise there is for your overall strength, your core strength, your feet, your hips and your legs, your back. I mean, it's just an overall body exercise. Nothing can replace that. Remember the hip sled? Remember when Nebraska? This is a great history. Because I was in college and I remember Nebraska won the national championship and everybody talked about they did the hip sled and all their offensive linemen, they could do 1,000 pounds, over 1,000 pounds. And so everybody translated hip sled into winning a national championship. Well, I mean, I remember our Idaho State converted everything to the hip sled. We do the hip sled for, a majority of my career. I don't even squat. I remember my senior year, there was 135 it was my leg day, and I was done. And I looked over, and there's 135 on the squat. I hadn't squatted in years. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try. I'm just going to do 135, just do a couple sets of 10, which I did. I leave. I get up the next morning. I get out of bed, Daddy, and I'm like, what happened? I'm like, my leg, my butt hurt, my inside, my legs hurt. What happened? I'm like, what did I do? And I start to, oh my gosh, okay. That 135, 2 sets of 10 had challenged stability muscles that the hip sled never did. It worked me in a way, a hip sled, and I was doing 800-900 pounds, right? I'm like, never did hip sled again. Never did it again. Have been devoted to squats ever since then. And now, you hardly ever see hip sled anywhere in college football now.
Yeah, it's funny. When I went to Maryland, I was, I could do about 315 or maybe on the bench press. So when I go to do squats, I was struggling with 135. And the strength coach, Ralph Friedgen, who was my position coach who recruited me to Maryland, he saw that I was struggling with that. He said to me, he goes, you know what? Starting tomorrow, I want you to come in here walking on your hands. And I go, what is that? What do you mean by that? And he goes, that's embarrassing, son. He goes, you better sleep onto that squat rack. And I was like, wow, and I took that to heart. And the strength coach of Maryland, his name was Frank Costello. And Frank, him and along with the other guys that worked there, I was able to leave Maryland squatting 605.
That's not chump change, baby. That's not chump change.
No, that was, I'd never forget. I felt like I was carrying 4 of me when that was on my back. So I know those, those long, hard days of leg drive and push. And then, the funniest thing is, here I am now in Pittsburgh, going back to Pittsburgh. I start working out with Terry Long. I'm over at Gold's Gym in North Hills, and I meet Terry one day at practice, and then all of a sudden, he's like, and then I see him in the gym, and me like a crazy lunatic, I decided to start working out back there with him and another guy, and I never forget the owner of the gym's like, man, there's so much noise going on back here, and Terry was doing deadlifts, and he's like lifting every available piece of equipment that was in there, put the machine on top of it, and I was like, oh my God. I went back to the apartment, and Neil's like, dude, you look like you got run over. I'm like, I did, man. I'm like, put my foot in my mouth, and here's what I got for it. So, but anyway, so, let's tell the folks a little bit, you leave football, you're finished with football, and then you get into TV. You had all those, that long run there, ESPN and Saturday mornings and NFL Live and, I guess with Jaws and Sal Powell, right? What was that like?
Yeah, well, let me just tell you this, that, I worked at ESPN for a little over 21 years, and it was, I could argue that at the beginning of my career there, it kind of saved my life in a sense, because the way that my career ended, people all the time, go, concussion ended your career. No, it did not. I go, had a concussion ended my career, I would never played after the Monday night game when I sustained my first one.
Yeah.
Improper care of that concussion ended my career.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got cleared over the phone 5 days later to return to play after answering one question, how do you feel? Even though I had a split and a headache, I didn't feel very good. I said I felt fine because I didn't know that those were symptoms. And you got to use what you knew at that time, meaning in 1994, players didn't know a lot of what they should be telling doctors because doctors weren't telling you what kind of symptoms to share. And a headache, shoot, I've had a headache before. I mean, is that going to stop me from practicing, you know? But anyway, that improper care. But even in 1994, to get cleared over the phone is very, very archaic. I mean, that never happened, especially in the NFL. I mean, keep in mind, cognitive testing was started in 1991 with the Steelers, and I had a baseline, but I was with the Bears, and they just weren't as advanced as the Steelers were at that time. But nonetheless, my career ended. I sustained another concussion about 5 weeks later. I went into cardiac arrest, was in intensive care for several days. And then I had a rehab, a cognitive rehab. I couldn't read, to balance a checkbook. I just couldn't function. I couldn't leave the house. In fact, I tell people the story all the time. The person that saved me was my 2-year-old daughter, because she was the only one who was patient enough to deal with me. Meaning, like, I could sit and I laugh at this now, but it's kind of scary. I mean, I would sit and watch Barney with her, and I enjoyed it. I was enjoying Barney, and she loved that because what adult's going to sit down and watch Barney with their 2-year-old kid for hours? Nobody. But that's where I was in my cognitive space. I had to learn how to read again. You know, I went through depression. I had a litany of issues, but what I'm getting to is ESPN gave me a chance. I should actually back up. It's really ESPN and the Steelers. Mr. Rooney called me, and I was the first player ever to be in the broadcast booth. You know, Tunch Ilkin does it now, but Tunch Ilkin replaced me. I was there before Tunch. But what I'm getting at is it challenged me cognitively. I had to start learning different things. And some of the things I had to learn were ways I learned best, which I like watching tape because I'm a visual guy. I'm not a reader. Like reading, I've always been a straw. I had a reading disability when I was in grade school that I had to work through. So that's never been a strength of mine. It's hard for me to learn that way. I'm a visual guy. So these visual projects from, you know, watching tape and getting ready to play and present and stuff. And I present on things on TV that was a challenge. That was arduous because you get all this information, you have to condense it into 45 seconds. But you also have to be listening to the dialogue going on, and there's a lot of traffic in television. And that was overwhelming for me. Now, we taped a lot of our shows, which thank goodness we did initially, because I made so many mistakes. We had to restart over. I can't even tell you how many times. The people that were behind the cameras and the set at that time, they were losing their mind because in fact, we came up with what we call redneck teleprompting. I started hanging a few words under each camera to help me stay on track because we didn't have teleprompters to stay on target with what I was saying. And I would never be able to listen to what like Jaws was saying or Mark Malone because I had to focus on what I was saying. But again, as those exercises helped me to regain my cognitive strength and cognitive ability. Now, today they have cognitive training and physical rehab and cognitive rehab that allows players to recover it rapidly. I mean, my son experienced it. You know, he doesn't get his head trauma is not even in football. It's actually slipping in a shower. So, you know, that's why people get so confused about head trauma. They think it's just in sports, and then they think it's just football. The leading cause of head trauma in the entire country is tripping and falling. Everybody's eligible. The most dangerous part of your home could be the shower. If you slip in the shower, tripping on the stairs, especially in the winter we just had in the climates that had a lot of snow and ice, falling. So tripping and falling is the leading cause of head trauma. It is not sports. And then it's objects when you get hit in the head in car accidents. Then when you get to sports, football is not even the leading cause of head trauma. When you think of incident rates and you do the numbers right, not just the numerator, but you add the denominator, the incident rates. Football is very low. So it gets the focus. However, head trauma can happen anywhere. So it's good to know, or for people to know, that the care and treatment for head trauma is significantly improved. There's a website, rethinkconcussion.com. I think that is a great website for people to get resources because, like I said, head trauma can happen anywhere. And people are struggling with symptoms after having head trauma, and they think it's doom and gloom, and they think it's going to translate to some mental disease or some brain disease, and that is not true. There's no scientific evidence that says that whatsoever. And don't let people like Boston University lie to you and tell you something about the science that their own science doesn't even say. They actually contradict their science. But we should be empowered by the treatment and care that you can find for head trauma if it were to happen. And so many people, parents are taking their kids out of sports because of fear of it. But meanwhile, the greatest danger is right in their home. I mean, it could happen. It could happen in the backyard. It can happen. Kids. I mean, my daughter has 4 kids, and I just got a picture of my granddaughter, 3 years old, who hit her head on the table when they were playing. Big old gash. I mean, so I think that's probably happened to every kid. Clearly it happened to me. So anyway, knowing things about head trauma care for head trauma treatment that we have, I think is just so important. But with this out ESPN and the Steelers, I don't know what happens to me if I don't have those opportunities, because it sure gave me a purpose, because I'd lost that. And that right there, I think everybody that will watch or hear this, Big Daddy, could identify. We just experienced everybody almost losing their purpose for a period of time. Yeah. And I'm sure that everybody could tap into how would that feel if it was gone for good and you had to rebuild yourself. That's not an easy process for a lot of people, for most people. And I had to rebuild myself, and that helped me. Mr. Rooney gave me an opportunity, ESPN gave me an opportunity, and then the experiences that I had are just they're irreplaceable. What they did, and grateful for that opportunity, and what I do now, I love and passionate about. I've rebuilt myself in a different way, and I love. And I was transitioning to speak anyway. I love the platform to share my message. It's not so I can tell people about what happened to me. The goal is to share with what is possible for you, what is truly possible for people when they use the tools that they have, which is the 2 greatest tools known to mankind, is your mind and your spirit. When those things are used for your goal, your challenge, or your circumstance, anything can happen in life, and you're more positive in the process and the journey. And as long as you can look in the mirror and go, I did my part, every aspect of a circumstance, a goal, or a dream, I mean, you should have peace with that. It's when we don't do our part and we have regrets later in life. We're like, man, I wish I would have. You don't want to have I wish I would have. And that's the power that every person possesses, that you have your control of. You are 100% control of you, and use the tools that you have to apply to whatever circumstance you're dealing with, or goal or dream you're trying to achieve.
So you got a nickname you had at ESPN, and I didn't know about it, but short tie aficionado. What was that?
Well, Big Daddy, okay.
I was laughing.
This is now this is how this all happens. Now, my ties all go just above my belt, all of them.
Yeah.
Now my tie is much bigger than most. I've been tying that since I was a kid, passing sacrament at church. I learned how to tie it one way. That's how I've always done it. That being said, one show we had at NFL Live, I remember I was doing it with Susie and Mike Golick. And it is the only time in 20-some years that this ever happens on NFL Live. We just spontaneously decide we're going to do a segment outside on the grass. And it's because the new facility was built, and we were going to do this grass, and we thought it would be nice to go out there and do a segment. Okay. That day is the only day that I actually had a tie that was shorter than every other tie that I own. And to tie it correctly, it came to about here, about halfway down my chest. The only time I ever do it. We get out there, we decide we're going to take our jackets off. I was like, okay. No, I take off my, everybody's like, oh, look how short your tie is. I go, well, it's the only time ever it's been that short. But they had a photographer there that day. They take a bunch of pictures. And so that's the picture that like everybody sees. And they think my tie under my suit is that short. It's not that short. It was the only time ever that my tie was like that. But that's how it got branded. It's just like, that's how the ties look, because, I always had a jacket on, so people thought it was that short. But none of my ties are that short. It was the only one ever in 20 plus years I did. And we took a picture, and that's what lives forever.
That's funny. I was like laughing when I was, talking about that to somebody, and I was like, oh, wow, I can't wait to hear Merril's response to this, because I've always been, now with everything that we got going on, no one wears ties. Everybody in a suit with no tie, which I love. But so anyway, and look, everyone has their ups and downs, and it's funny how you talk about the being disabled, so to speak, for TV when you first start out. Here, and some of the viewers know this and listeners know this and some don't. I survived a brain aneurysm in 2008, and I had some hearing loss. So I'm on the set of Fox and Friends from the Super Bowl, and I'm with our boy, Brian Kilmeade, and we're talking, and they mic us up, but they give us each an earplug, an earpiece. And I have the one in my good ear and the one in my bad ear. And Brian's talking to me into my bad ear one, the bad ear side. I almost had a panic attack because I did not hear one word he said. And I'm like, yeah, well, and I'm like saying to myself, oh my Lord, I can't wait to, I have to see this, a copy of this, because who knows what he asked me, and how I responded was so I always had to be, going forward, never have this ear with an earpiece in it, and go listen as best as I can with the other one. And I didn't know anything. This is when I first started. So it's just like, here you go, Big Daddy. I get handed a mic and I'm running around, Dallas or Houston, wherever we were. Hey, what are you doing with a mic, Big Daddy? Because you're going up to guys like you and Goose and, whoever's at an event, and they're just shocked to see you. Fox and Friends, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm a little side gig I got. And now I've gotten to really enjoy it and embrace it, and I learn more and more, and I've watched every one of you guys from A to Z on all different aspects of being on TV and interviewing and giving perspectives and on all those things. So it's been and then the guy got into this part of the world with podcasts and live streaming and everything. So it's I've expanded my horizons. I've come a long way from being Neil O'Donnell's valet.
We'll get to OD in a second. You hit some interesting points, Big Daddy, because I think in everybody's craft, and that's what when I speak, I talk about these type of things, and trying to be uncommon. Chuck Noll always challenges to be uncommon, not common. Everybody can be common. That is somebody who does the minimum. Mm-hmm. I want you to be uncommon. That's somebody that'll do the maximum. So within everybody's craft, there's ways to widen your scope and learn how to be better and do better. So when I got into broadcasting, they didn't give you a teaching tool. The ESPN didn't hire somebody to help you on television. It was on you. It was like, they give you a 2-year deal, you sink or swim. And so what I did, I got very lucky that I had two great producers. I had Greg Cosell at NFL Films for our matchup show, and Jerry Madelon at ESPN. Both those guys were instrumental at challenging me and helping me. And Jerry Madelon was very good at seeing where my strengths were and seeing moments off camera. And he's like, okay, I need that on camera. So he would challenge me and get me to see those things. But a guy that Jaws was a great instrument. He was instrumental for me, because I knew this about, I better never sit on a set and not be prepared with that dude. I remember the first time I ever did a show with him, I'm like, and he helped me get ready for the show because I only had like 24 hours to get ready for it, which takes about 4 days to get ready for that matchup show. And I remember walking off the set going, hey, he was the most genuine, friendly. I mean, he's one of my dearest friends to this day, but I'm like, I will never get on a set with that guy and not be ready and prepared. And in 20 plus years, I was always ready when I got on that set, but he taught me that. He was prepared. I mean, that guy was prepared with every aspect of every team, which I admired. And it was an arduous challenge to get ready like that and learn to the level that he was capable of. But Stuart Scott, I remember when Stuart first came to ESPN, we became really good friends. He hosted our matchup show, so we traveled a lot together. And so one day I was just asking him, about, so how he thought about TV cameras and TVs and shows. And he's like, Merril, here's how I look at things. And this really helped me. This and one other thing that I'll share with you, and then I'll be done. He's like, when that camera is on me, it is my show. It is my time. And I'm like, I just think of that power and authority that he did. Then I would watch him. I tell you, that's how he was. Man, when that camera hit him, he was like, that's my time. That's my time to show, and that is my time. And I go, you got to do it you got to do it in the framework of television. He goes, but at your time. He goes, take it. And then Jerry Madelon shared something with me that I wrote down for years that ended up being one of the most powerful things I ever did in television is be bold and dynamic. Now, you cannot be bold and dynamic if you are not prepared. So there's the whole process that goes with that, For me anyway, being bold and dynamic, I can be bold and dynamic as long as I'm prepared. Now, I am not equipped. I'm not the person that can be bold and dynamic and throw garbage against the wall. Now, some people can. They just throw garbage against the wall. There's no facts behind it. There's really no evidence, and it's wrong, But being bold and dynamic, Stuart Scott and his how he helped me with television and how to approach a camera and how to look at things was helpful. And Jaws, I had great mentors, Greg Cosell, Mark Malone. Just fabulous people that were that helped me in my craft, when I first started, and still use it to this day, and have helped mold me in the process.
So now here's a big. Now we'll talk football real quick. The Steelers. What do you think? What's their quarterback situation? What do you think about that right now?
Well, this Ben's going to come back, so that's your answer for another year. Now, one thing I think people need to remember, Big Daddy, I'm sure you've been hurt before. When you have an injury, especially the magnitude that Ben did, it takes you almost an entire year of rehab and to have played to fully recover. I don't think there's any question. I don't know this for a fact. Ben and I are good friends. We talk all the time. I don't wear him out about football. I ask him how he's feeling, but I've not talked to him like this about it. But I've had injuries like this, so I have experience with it. That it takes you almost an entire year of actual play to fully recover. Yeah. So I don't think there's any question that his arm possibly could have got tired towards the end of the year just because of the injury, the lack of mobility you had for a period of time. All the atrophy that goes on and all the buildup you have to do in the rehab process, and then you have to complete a season. My point is, I believe he'll be better next year. Physically, he'll be better next year because he weathered that entire year without re-injuring it, strengthened it. But now the proper rehab has been done, and now I think that he will be in a much better state physically, especially with his arm, which is critical. So now that being said, that gives you a chance just because you have number 7, but they've had a lot of issues with their offensive line, really eroded bad. They didn't really have a back that really stood up to handling first and second down and third down. They didn't have anybody that was consistent. They needed a good back. They need a back. They changed that. They improved that area with their team, their offensive line, the core of it, and get a runner that they can trust and have, hand the ball off and be a thumper for 20, 22 carries a game, which they don't have. They have that. That changes the whole dynamic, not of their offense, but of their team. Because in the NFL, the one thing that is, I'm going to tell you this, I've had this discussion with Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Bill Parcells. Oh, God, I'm trying to think of Bill Polian. There we go. The most important aspect in the National Football League, it's different than college, it's different than high school and any other level of football. The most important aspect of winning on a consistent basis is controlling the tempo. You must control the environment in the NFL just because everything is so equal and there's so many things that match up equal. You have to control the tempo of the game. And that's why people always talk about, got to run the ball, got to stop the run. Well, the reason for that is if I can run the football, I become the dictator. I control what you are doing defensively. I can almost force you into doing certain things. That allows a much easier play calling for me. Once I do that, that defense, instead of playing 65 snaps, they play about 50 snaps. They are a lot better defense when they're on the sideline. And that just helps the environment of your team when on a consistent basis. So, and that will never change in the NFL. People say passing league. It's a much more sophisticated passing league, but the running game is still a critical component if you're going to win a championship. You can look at the history of Super Bowls, and that has always been a major factor. There's only one team I can think of in 50-plus years that got away with it and ended up winning. It was the Rams that one year. Mm-hmm. The one year they beat the Titans, and then they barely won. Yeah. It isn't like they blew the Titans out. They barely won that game. Mm-hmm. When you lose that aspect and you don't have that phase to your team, it's difficult to win. And that really showed up towards the end of the year. So I don't think there's any question that has to get better. And they did a little help in their secondary. Linebacker depth will help, but I just think that those are kind of some areas that they will address. They've already started to address, and it will have to get better for them to be even considered to win a championship next year.
So you've been following this draft. What's your take on, let's just say, the top 5 picks?
I think the one that probably will resonate in your area is the Jets pick. Now Zach Wilson actually. My son, Bo, played at BYU and was a quarterback at BYU. Zach came in and was behind Bo at BYU. He lived with Bo. So I've known Zach. I've watched Zach when he was in high school. And I remember watching him in high school. I can't believe this kid wasn't recruited more than he was recruited. And that's kind of how his skill set stood out to me. I think he has a chance to be fabulous. I really do. There's very few Peyton Mannings that walk out, that are coming out that go, listen, that's a sure deal, but there's still Peyton Manning couldn't throw the ball outside the numbers when he first got in the NFL. That was just a strength thing. He had to become better at that, and which he did, obviously. Zach in his career has always struggled in games and with teams that were equal to BYU. You look at the Utah games, the Hawaii games, the Washington game, the Toledo game. Now everybody pointed last year's season to the Coastal Carolina game. Well, that was the only team that was even relatively close to BYU and ended up beating them. All the other teams, honestly, were inferior by a mile. It isn't like – and so people talk about his drastic improvement. I don't want to minimize because the kid works. The one thing I want to make very clear, this kid is passionate about football, which you must have. Like, you want that in your player. You no matter what your position, they got to love it. Okay, he loves it. There right there gives you half the battle's over because he loves it. He's going to work. Is he coachable? There's no, people say, people outside go, oh, he's arrogant. Now, Zach will come off with a certain attitude, but the attitude that Zach has, quite honestly, I want in my quarterback. Big Daddy, how would you like a quarterback stepping in the huddle going, okay, guys, okay, here's what we're going to try. Red Dog 9, 72. What do you want? Okay, get in here, huddle up. Zach, Big Daddy, something. Look, here's what we're doing. I mean, somebody who's in charge. Yeah. I mean, that's how he is. He's always respectful. Okay? So somebody who's confident, and respectful, I got no problem with that. Some people think that's offensive, and they're cocky. He's not. But going to the games that in his first year, all the Utah games, his second year, and even his third year, he did some things in those games that only somebody, this is what the NFL has an advantage, the Jets will have an advantage. They'll sit down with Zach, and if you don't do this, actually you're making a mistake. You want to ask him what happened in these games, in these moments, because at the end of the game, he made some bad choices. Threw a lot of pick sixes. I mean, they are not like, they were incompletions. There's some really bad decisions. Wasn't one. There's a history of it, for 3 years. So you'd want to walk through those games and go, hey, what was going on here? Now, the explanation that the kid's going to give you is going to make you feel comfortable or going to put a red flag up, and those things only a team will know, but you have to address that. But that's really his only major real issue is those big games, those big moments. He didn't perform like you'd like him to, but he has an incredible skill set. He is as accurate a player. Now everybody gets on these acrobatic Patrick Mahomes throws. I'm like, okay, time out. What you drafted him for? I don't think the Jet fans are going to be all cool in the gang and happy that he's out there throwing acrobatic throws and completing balls all over the place and you're not winning. The bottom line is you got to win. And we know that every fan in football knows you have to win. Can you win? And so that's why those red flags exist, because when they had to win, he made some bad choices, and it was a history. It wasn't just one game. There's like half a dozen to 8 games that were critical games. The Utah games were like, wow. And he had done so many great things up to that. So it would just be something you have to address, but I don't think there's any doubt the Jets draft him. And I do believe, that being said, those things are probably coachable and transitionable, meaning, Zach will learn from them and try not to make them at the next level. And I think it's always how you play, not where you play, because people will say, oh, he doesn't play at big time. Well, neither did Khalil Mack. I remember people going, oh, he plays in Buffalo. I'm going to say like this. Khalil Mack was the greatest football player defensively I've ever seen coming out of college football, studying. The greatest football player. From feet, hips to hands, I never see anybody play. He could play defensive end, outside linebacker, and inside linebacker too, and have been an all-pro. Never seen it. Irrelevant that he played at Buffalo. Now, with Zach, it does matter in a little bit. Like the people he threw, the defenses he played this year, honestly, the people were so wide open. He would stand back there for 3 and 4 seconds. Okay, that is not going to happen. That is unrealistic in the NFL. So going back to the problems that I said that he kind of showed up, when he does have to play a little quicker and there is more traffic, he wasn't quite the same player, which, listen, no player is the more traffic you are. But at the end of the day, you have to become efficient in that arena in the NFL. So that will be, I think, his biggest hurdle that he has to overcome or develop and get better at. But he clearly has the skill set to do it. He has the mindset to do it. And I'm excited for him and finally the Jets, because I know so many Jet fans that are dying for, for finally something, good to come their way. And this might be the kid that does it.
Well, all you Jet fans, you just got the professional, analytical take on your future quarterback. That's exciting to hear. And obviously it means a lot when it comes from a guy like you, Merril, because you're a chef that's in the kitchen. You always get these guys that give their opinion on how to do this, but their feet aren't in the sand, so to speak. Always the wrong decision maker.
Yeah, well, Big Daddy, you're right. Listen, I'd be honest with you. If I didn't have that machine that's sitting on the other side of that camera there, where I could watch coaching tape, I could watch every throw of Zach's. Yeah. I wouldn't. I'd tell you that. I'd like listen. I saw him. I've been there live with him. I know him personally. He lived with my son, so I can tell you the kind of kid he is. He's a super kid. He's a respectful kid. But and I've watched him throw. I know that he plays the position pretty. But see, that's not a skill set either. That gets caught up. Oh, it looks so good. Well, that's irrelevant. Okay, but he is accurate. He makes good decisions, but when you look at how wide open and easy it would be easy to make decisions. So that's why you got to go back to those games where the traffic wasn't as clear and the decisions weren't as good. That's more what you're going to see in the NFL. But I still believe he has the work ethic and the type of coaching he will get. He will work through that. And I do believe the kid has a moxie about him that he'll be okay in the environment of New York. It's going to be a setback no matter where you come from in college football. When you go to New York, it is. But he'll learn to adjust to that and adapt to it. And I get excited for the Jets. And here, I love what they're doing too. I love their coaching staff, and I love what they're doing. There couldn't be a better system that Zach's going to walk into. I think the best way to throw the football in all of the ways we could throw the football in the NFL is run action. Now, most announcers always say it's play action, play action. Okay, you hear play action on everything. There's three phases. There's play action, there's run action, and RPO action. Mm-hmm. Well, play action is when a quarterback and a running back and maybe even a receiver does a reverse off the back end, but they do some type of action in the backfield, then they throw it, versus the quarterback is dropping back. Run action is when the offensive line is coming off the ball, the runner is coming downhill, and they're faking hard like it is run, and the entire box is collapsing because they think it's run, and then they throw off it. That is run action. 49ers do that as good or better than anybody in football. That's the foundation of how they throw the football. Now, there's the RPO, too, where the quarterback has the option to run or pass based on what the defense does. Again, that's hard run action. And people go, well, the offensive line, they don't know. I go, it's irrelevant with the offensive line. The play in the huddle in an RPO is a run or a pass. Offensive line, you run block. You don't have to read anything. You're run blocking. I, as the quarterback, have to get rid of the football before you get downfield. Okay, that's why it's got to be quick. The Jets, the Chiefs do this very well. Now, they're more of a vertical RPO. They take shots down the field. But what I'm getting at, the system, that's what the Jet system is going to be. And that could not be a better system for a quarterback than to have that, And if they get a runner in this draft, which they have a chance to, and there's just some good ones, and they will be there, and their offensive line, listen, that's got to be addressed significantly too. These two guys cannot make things happen unless up front is great. And they were not very good there, and they have to get much better there, and that might take a couple of years before they get there. But the system in itself, I think, helps Zach transition much better than something where we're wide open and you're putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and it's 4 and 5 wides all the time, and you got to read things and dissect things, and it can be more confusing and complicated. It'll be very simplified for him and give him a chance, I think, really to develop and help the Jets win.
So now let's flip sides here real quick. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, motivational speaking. I know that's a big thing for you. You enjoy it. You by listening to you, you're motivating me. It's you know how to bring it out in people, and I can tell that by listening to, even though you're not really expressing like a motivational message, your message is coming out, and I'm taking it all in. So get into that a little bit.
Well, Big Daddy, I got challenged when I was diagnosed with cancer, almost 20 years ago. And I say 20 years ago because it gives us, I have a perspective of all that I would have missed. I just mentioned Stuart Scott, and the thing that connected us was we love being dads. So we talk a lot about being dads, really more than even television. And, when he passed away, I always reflect now, the things that he's missing right now with his daughters that I don't miss with my kids. And so even when I have an opportunity to speak, which really drives me, that opportunity, I always reflect on, I'd have missed this opportunity, but I got the challenge. Actually, I was sitting in my chemotherapy chair. It was my last treatment, actually. And a good friend of mine hired a film crew to film the day. Because I told him I'd get up, after I got done with treatment, because treatment would last about 10 hours, is I'd go work out or I'd play in my basketball league, depending on if we had a game. And he's like, you work out after? And I was like, Charlie, it has saved my life. I go, had I not been working out prior to, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But I've been investing in my health my entire life, and I'm using that to beat this battle. So he hires a film crew and really documents the day. Now, I thought he was hiring the film crew so that we could really get some footage if I don't make it. Because at this point, we don't know if it's going to work. And my doctor had told me off the very beginning, he's like, listen, I can't guarantee this is going to work. And that was gut-wrenching. I had a 3-pound tumor in my lower back. You know, they just didn't know if it was going to be able to be, it was malignant. You know, I had stage 3, and, you know, I had a huge battle ahead of me. Now that being said, so I thought we were using that day. Yeah, we're using it to reflect. It was more based on my kids. So he asked me a lot of questions about my kids, and we were just talking, and I shared with him how Find a Way came into my life. It was when I wrote a goal up and I put it up in my bedroom wall that I will play in the National Football League. And it was that moment of truth in life, we all have them, where I'm looking at that goal and I'm thinking of everything everybody said to me. You know, like everybody say, in fact, this is why I see things through a child's eye, most adults, because of what happened to me as a kid. The people that were supposed to encourage me were the first ones to discourage me. They say, oh, you know how hard that is? You know what the odds are of you playing in the NFL? Oh, don't put all your eggs in one basket, son. Oh, that's impossible. Well, I was looking at that goal, I will play in the NFL, and I started thinking about all that stuff. And I remember my energy just like exhausting. I mean, being gone. I will play in the NFL was just words on a wall. And then the words Find a Way like popped into my head, Big Daddy. It was like, and it gave me an energy. It inspired one thing that I still use today. It sits over on my wall right there. I've just included every day because of Walter Payton. Find a Way every day. It inspired action. I got energized about doing something about my circumstance. Okay, now I was in control. So I use a lot of these messages and experiences. I share them with people, not just because I heard them, read them, saw them, or somebody told me about them. I share them because I lived them. But I share them more importantly because I know what's possible now. I know what's possible for you or anybody listening or watching your show, what is truly possible when you use your mind and your spirit for you versus against you. Because even no matter what goal, dream, circumstance, challenge you might have, your mind is immediately engaged. There's a thought process going on, okay? So that's why I asked, do you control your mind or does your mind control you? Well, if we learn how to control our mind, I did that very first exercise at age 12. What happened when I put that goal up? I will play in the National Football League. My mind was controlling me. My mind's telling me everything everybody has said to me, and what's it doing for me? Zapping my energy. Well, that's when the words Find a Way changed that energy. I now was in charge. And it was the first time I transitioned to I controlled my mind. I was going to find ways to win. I was going to find ways to be successful at that. So I sensed me on a journey. I mean, that's where I discovered a quote by Aristotle that really becomes the footer of footer of the journey. But Walter Payton becoming such a significant impact in that journey indirectly in a videotape that I bought, that I saw an interview with him that changed my whole journey to eventually meeting him and getting to be friends with him when I played in Chicago. So I share all of those things as how it helped mold me and help me control my mind. So the point when I get done is I'm hoping that people realize what's possible for them. You are in control. You are responsible. If you control your mind, all the things that you can do to change your circumstances or live your dreams is truly in your hands if you use them that way. And so at the end, to be able to share that with people and getting unsolicited responses at the end where it's not about me, it's about what I'm ultimately goal is when I'm done, they think about themselves. They're thinking about how they can do things to better their chance or their circumstance or go after their dream or goal. When I hear that from people, I've done my job. That they're starting to look at themselves and go, yes, I start looking at this, I can do this. And that's what it's about. That's what moves me. And that's why I'm grateful for, every time I have an opportunity to speak. And what we just went through last year, and that completely went away. So I understand losing your purpose again in your life. And so it's coming back now, and I knew it would come back, and you hold hope to that. But I truly identify with people that have been lost their purpose, and trying to find ways to get it back and maybe don't have that chance to go to that same purpose. and I've been there too. So, hopefully that message at times can help them, give them the spark they need, because I'm a product of a lot of people. That you'd be one of those guys. Even though we bust our boys' chops, Neil O'Donnell, he's one of those guys. Life, I tell people all the time, football is the greatest team sport I ever played, but life is the greatest team game. And individually we're strong, but collectively we're powerful. I've learned stuff from you. I heard stuff today. I didn't know you had an aneurysm. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea that took place. Now, that's sometimes when you lose connection with people, but that's why the connection is good. Doesn't matter that we haven't talked to each other for a long time. That's how relationships are sometimes, but we can pick up right where we left off. But not knowing that, you're like, shoot, I mean, to withstand that is something. I mean, that's an incredible journey. I mean, that I would love to know more about and hear more about, and grateful that you got through it. But people are important, and the journey is important, and having people to support and help us is vital. Without them, I really don't have much to share. But so many people who have impacted me, I feel like I have a lot to share that hopefully could help somebody, and they could apply to their life any way they see fit.
That's why, when I knew that I had the brain aneurysm and all that, the one thing, it didn't really hit me until the doctor said to me, hey, we have some forms we have to fill out. And, they're waivers, if you don't wake up, if you don't survive and whatever. And I was like, you know what? I could honestly say this because, and I could say this with a smile. Had it been my time to go, I could not leave upset or be angry, because I've done some of the most amazing things on this planet that most people will never, ever do. So I looked at it, okay, if that's it, that's it. If not, then it's not my time to go. So what am I going to do about it? So then, now you're aware of this. I've put on the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic, which is coming back after a 4-year hiatus. And I know you're going to be a guest. So it was like, all right, let me just ask all my friends that are all name-worthy and high places and are charitable and giving, let's put something on that we raise money, And obviously I've had a lot of success with it. Everyone's excited it's coming back, and we've got a who's who of people coming. And so that kind of a setback like that is what led me to say, okay, let me put something on and let's do something about it. And then my youngest brother, I don't know if you know this, Merril, he's a defensive backs coach for the Bills.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's a DB coach up there in Buffalo. And, him and I wanted to give back to our hometown. So we started the Big Daddy Youth Football Camp. And we bring guys in, and we bring, guys like Steve Spagnuolo come in, coaches, players. I mean, and that's to give back to our neighborhood. And you know why? Because I'm fortunate to have friends like you, where we can ask for a favor and say, hey, come in, and the lessons that you can teach and give these kids that, some of them won't go beyond high school football, and as long as they're able to see that they're heroes on TV and guys that have been in the trenches and they respect and look up to, that's a way to give back. So I think, the big joke has always been, I also had coronavirus, and I was in the hospital for 3 days last March. And I'd been interviewed by The Athletic, and the reporter, Daniel Kaplan, said to me, so give me a point that you want to share. I said, laugh, and I was laughing as I said it. I said, look, I survived a brain aneurysm, I survived divorce, and now I survived coronavirus. The good Lord's not ready to take me yet. I have a job to do. and a goal, and I have to give back. And that's really my, my whole thing, because I've been so fortunate from the days of obviously Pittsburgh. And I'm going to share a real quick story before we go in regards to you and I. But that's really how I feel. And it's not about notoriety. It's not about this or that. Look, having a foundation and a lot of people do all these things to help their family members and make money and all that. I don't take a nickel from any of it. If there's money to be raised, it has to be used to for the goal that you're raising it for. Not for me to draw a salary or have my family draw salaries or friends or none of that. None of those things happen, and it's about giving back. So I always cherish the opportunities, the relationships, and the friendships. But one quick story, and I don't even know if you'll remember this. The first and only time that I've ever been to Youngstown, Ohio, I was with you. And it's a small world, right? We went out there for some country, I don't know, it had to do with country and boots. But, for some reason, you and I ended up going out with you. So we drive from Pittsburgh and we go to some signing thing, and it happened to be like at some country western bar or restaurant or whatever. Well, one of the guys that was involved with that was a guy named Rick Blaze, who owns a bunch of stores that sell cowboy boots. Well, I go out with you, we do all that, you do your thing, blah, 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 and then we come back. Well, 25 years later, I'm at a Cleveland Browns game, and a friend of mine introduces me to that same guy that brought you out to do the appearance. I mean, like, it was crazy because he's like, I know you, Big Daddy. I was like, how do you know me? He goes, you came out to Youngstown with Merril Hoge. I go, oh, my Lord. I go, I totally forgot about that.
No, I'm telling you, I did too, until you mentioned. I remember he gave me cowboy boots. He gave me boots. Listen, I used to cowboy. I mean, that's why. I remember that's why it fit, because I'm from the West. I used to cowboy. I rodeoed for a while. I played football for a year to do it. And so that's crazy. That's funny, man.
You want to talk about a small world? I mean, like, I'm sitting there on the sideline before the game chatting, and we're talking about you. And I'm like, oh, my God. I go, man, I forgot about that. It was
that's funny.
My one and only time to Youngstown, Ohio was with Merril Hoge. Oh, man. But, hey, listen, now we're going to give you a quick opportunity to take the mic from me and ask me a question that you think you want to know or whatever.
Well, I'd say there was a couple things. You answered one with the aneurysm. I was curious about that. But one I've never asked you that I've always wanted to know is how you and Neil Donald met.
We were teammates at Maryland. And
did you guys come in together?
No, he was a year older than me. It was funny. He was a year eligibility wise. He was a year older than me, but I came in the spring after he had gotten there in the fall, and then he was out there his rookie year, and we were talking, and he was like, he goes, "What are you doing, man?" I go, "Not much." He goes, "Why don't you come out to Pittsburgh?" And I was like, "All right." So I came out. All of a sudden, I found myself coming back, and I had a three-year run in living in Pittsburgh with him. And
that's beautiful.
Listen, I remember we would always go to your house. We got to go to Merril's house. Why? Because, we got to get a workout, and then we got to sit in the sauna. I was like, Neil, we can go to the gym. No, let's go to Merril's. So that's how that whole thing, and then we've been tied ever since.
Well, let me tell you this. That's having special relationships like that to me are priceless. Honestly, they are absolutely priceless.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. But well, listen, wow, we could probably be on for like 3 hours, but we can't.
No doubt.
I got to say, hey, Merril, man, thanks a lot for coming on, and let everyone know, the viewers and listeners, how they could find you, on social media, website.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, Big Daddy. And the simplest way is just to go to merrilhoge.com. It's MERRILHOGE. There's no D in Hodge, no two L's in Merril, unfortunately. merrilhoge.com. And that really all the resources are there for everything. So even my speaking resources are there, so you can go there, and I appreciate that opportunity to plug that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do this again. And just remember, everyone who wants to meet Merril Hoge can come out to Long Island on June 28th, 29th, because he will be at the Big Daddy Celebrity Golf Classic.
Amen. Can't wait, Big Daddy.
So, okay, now, Big Daddy and Merril, we're going to both sign off from Big Daddy and Friends. Until next time, we'll see everybody real soon. And once again, Haji, thanks again, man. I love you, and I appreciate it.
Love you too, big brother.